Hello, I know that a lot of people would like to be rich one day. And one of the ways that people would love to be rich is through real estate. All rich people have real estate, and this guy here breaks it down to you step by step. He shows you the numbers, he speaks to you about real estate in a way that's easily digestible and for you to understand. Go check his links down in the description below on Instagram and on TikTok. You're getting information straight from the millionaires' mouths. This is the type of content that should be going viral. Tell your friends, and I love you all.
Should you buy stocks or real estate? Both can be good, but there's one big advantage with real estate. Let me explain.
East Coast or West Coast?
I am I am Nashville, so Central Time. Where are you guys?
I'm in New York.
Yeah, we're based in New York. Oh yeah,
What part?
Queens.
Queen.
Okay. I just texted with my buddy from Brooklyn just a minute ago.
Ah, you've been to New
He's
York?
in the mortgage business. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's pretty good.
What
He
what
owns a
made
company up there.
what made you get into real estate and finances?
So I got into real estate and I got into lending I got into by accident. So I was an insurance agent. So just a little bit about me. What I do is I do a few things, but I'm a lender. That's my primary job. Okay, so that's most of my cash flow right now. And but I have real estate, that sort of thing. But I got into lending by accident. I was tired of long hours. I was an insurance agent, and I was actually trying to recruit one of my best friends to come work for me. And just kind of in the middle of talking, he was just like, dude, you need to come do this. You would love it. You're asking people for money. We give people the money. I'll never forget he said that. And within a week, I left the insurance business I'd been in for 6 years and took a job at a local mortgage company here in suburb of Nashville called Brentwood.
Got you.
So,
And
and I,
yeah.
I was just, how does one become a lender? I didn't know there's a job application or a process you got to go through to become a lender. I just thought if you had the money, you just start lending money to people.
Yeah, so at a really base level, like I didn't know either. So like I was a marketing major at Belmont University in Nashville and really didn't know, it was kind of by default, marketing. So I figured, my dad was in sales. I didn't really know, exactly what I wanted to do. So to be honest with you, I didn't really, the same thing you're asking about lending, I had that same question about insurance. I was like, okay, I've heard that word, but what does that mean? Is it car insurance, or what? I was selling like life insurance and, things like that, like small medical supplement policies. So lending, I stumbled into kind of the, like I said, with my buddy Dave, at the time you could open up a mortgage company with very little and like be a mortgage broker. And so then being a loan officer, you're just sort of, partnering up with different people to send you deals. But wherever you're working, that place needs to be able to close, and fund loans. And so they would have a relationship with these other, investors. You guys might remember like Countrywide. That was one that kind of went away that Bank of America had at one time. So that was like the big, company, because they kind of had an A paper side for people, and then they had what was called subprime or BC paper. And that's what kind of, that whole market of BC kind of went away after the '08 fallout. So I don't know if you guys ever watched The Big Short. I've never seen it, but Brad Pitt, it's apparently a great movie. It explains the demise of the subprime lending market. So that was where exotic loans were really risky, adjustable rates. People probably shouldn't have been having loans. A lot of greed on Wall Street was causing more and more people to invest in these. And then once they started coming due, they started defaulting. Once the rate started adjusted, the people couldn't afford the payments anymore, and they started defaulting, and it was just a collapse because there were so many of them. But that's kind of how I started. I started in '96 actually, and so that's how I got started. And then real estate. I bought my first home when I was 27. And then from there, I just tried to keep whatever home I bought and rent it out. That's how I did that.
What,
Just
what
as
do
an
you
investor.
what do you think has been the biggest lesson throughout all your financial endeavors that you've learned?
I think just education is probably, is the key. Doing your research, having someone who gives you sound advice, like a mentor, but also I've learned to trust my own instincts, or my own gut, I guess, for lack of a better word, because there's going to be there's times where there's risk in everything. There's risk in doing something. There's risk in staying put.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I think, you have to trust what you already know, even if you're getting conflicting information, because ultimately you're the one that has to deal with the decision. And so, but, for biggest lesson, I think you really have to educate yourself, and have somebody that's with you that is really a sounding board, or that's trustworthy, that can help you along the way. I mean, everybody's already done whatever it is we want to do. It's just finding the right people around you to walk with you through whatever you're wanting to walk through, whether it's real estate or whatever. Think of Kobe. He got with Michael early on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just wore him out. Always calling him, texting him. So I don't think it would have been the same if Michael wasn't there. I mean, I think we'd see a different Kobe. I'm not saying he wouldn't still be great. I'm just saying there was a lot that he got out of that relationship.
That's true.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that you bought your first home at 27. We're both, Glass and I, we're 26 now. So you at that age, can you walk us through, how that became a thing? Like any tips for, people our age that would like to buy a home? Like what's some information that we could use from that? Because I know that's something that I definitely want to do in the upcoming future. So some advice would definitely be helpful.
Sure. So, there are programs that allow people to purchase homes with, little or even no money down. So the program itself will allow for that. So what you have to do is find out. So if you go to this site called HUD.gov/states, and then you click on Learn About Home Ownership, it's going to show you, like in this area, we have THDA, Tennessee Housing Development, and that's a local zero down program, and the borrowers there's an income restriction. So what for each county, they're going to have, you know, a limit that the household income can be. So if you have one person in the household, there's an income limit for that, but there's 2 or 3 people, the income limit's higher. There's also there's a price you pay with that, because they're sort of in the boat with you, and they want what they do is they grant you the down payment. And you can look this up in your own state. And I can get you connected, you know, with my buddy that I told you about, who owns a mortgage company up there. But that's probably the best way, is to get in. Another way is, you know, FHA is 3.5% down. But if you have good credit scores, conventional 3% down is really the best bang for your dollar. So conventional loans, like, that means like it's Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. You're going to have some advantages there, because they can do like 3% down. They reward you for having better scores. And then there's this thing called like private mortgage insurance, which is basically foreclosure protection for the lender. But it's cheaper with conventional. Now, once you get into lower scores, like anything 680 down to 580, conventional becomes more expensive, and FHA becomes better. Any of those, back to the 0 down programs that are like regional for your region, those grant type programs, usually you got to have a 640 score for those. So the other way you can do it is partner up with someone. So I see a parent or brother or uncle, you know, help out with either co-signing or with the down payment. And you guys, you know, then they'll work out something on their own of how their work, you know, what kind of deal they're doing, you know, together. So, for example, somebody buys a house. So, Prince, you buy one, you have a relative or something that co-signs with you, and they don't necessarily live there, but they could help propel you to get you into the house. Now, they have to have good credit too, and also like margin in order to give you, and I'm just saying margin as a word, is just a general, they need enough purchasing power to be able to share some with you. They can't be maxed out, and then they won't have anything. If their boat's full, they can't take on any more. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's a few ways to do it, but like, here's what's cool about today is, yes, buying your first home is great and it's important. I definitely believe that. What I'm just seeing now is there's definitely people out there that just are so young that they're not even buying their first home yet before they purchase a rental property. So they're getting into wholesaling or investing or flipping or something, to where, you know, they're using other people's money, like hard lender money, which means, you know, that it's basically like a 90-day note. It's, you know, hard lenders will just lend. They don't really do credit checks and all this stuff. You know, they're concerned about, but it'd be like a 12% rate, but for 3 months, and then you're kind of in and out of it. And so what the idea would be is that the person who buys it either flips it, sells it again, like after they've done some work to it, or they refinance it. So I just think it's cool that there are people out there that are purchasing homes that are young people and getting into investing, and sometimes they don't even own, you know, they're working the real estate market, but they don't even own their own home yet. And, you know, I think it's good, but sometimes it's best to rent. I mean, especially if you're not sure where you're going to land, you know. But owning property in general is almost always going to work out if you've done your homework. It doesn't mean property values don't go down. I've definitely experienced that. They will go down at some point, but I mean, right now what's going on is just, it's a different thing than '08. And a lot of people think it's the same, But there's just no inventory right now. So we have 400,000 homes, on MLS right now, and there were millions on MLS back in '08. So there's true demand, and that's what's the competition. Plus, it's cheaper to live here than it is in Queens, or it's cheaper to live here than it is in California, right? And so people, if you look at my story from yesterday, I did this graph where it showed basically a picture of the U.S. and it was all these arrows going down to the southeast, and that's where everybody was sort of hemorrhaging people, and it was going down to the southeast, and that's where every other region was losing people, and the southeast from Texas all the way over to the East Coast, maybe roping in Kentucky as far north as that, maybe at the most. And so all of those states, people are I mean, it's even more competitive.
How would you suggest someone get into real estate with absolutely horrible credit?
So with horrible credit, obviously you can work on the credit. It's always going to pay dividends long term to work on that, and that is a very competitive market to where there's a lot of credit repair people out there, and some are good and some are not. Meaning, some of them get the results, some of them don't. But we do a lot of credit advice here. I mean, we don't charge for that. It's more of just like a value add that we do. And if it's really, really the credit, needs a lot of work, it's going to take a few months, then we would refer them to someone that we trust that will, and they charge a fee to the person to enroll in their program, and they try to get deletions off of their credit. So like one of the biggest things that people just don't know, for example, is they say they have medical collections or student loan stuff or whatever. I mean, some people think that just paying the medical collection, or let's say it was the last place they lived, they didn't pay the electric or water or phone or whatever, and so now it's turned over to a collector, or a credit card turned over to a collector. So when that happens, a lot of people think just paying it is the right thing to do, but it's really not. If you pay it, it actually makes it worse at first. It's kind of like, this is what I don't know, I've gotten lots of speeding tickets. I probably got my first one when I was 16, not lots, I'm not like a speed demon, but everybody's got a speeding ticket, right? We all know to not just pay it, because if you just pay it, now it's on your record and you really can't get it off. That's kind of what a collection, if you just pay it, what you really want to do is you want to ask them for a deletion in exchange for whatever deal whatever you're going to pay them to get it off. So, and you want to do that in writing. So the deletion means that they remove it. So kind of like using the ticket, speeding ticket, the judge says, well, if you go to the class, right, that they'll expunge it from your record. They'll take it off. And so it was never there. So, I mean, it technically it happened, but it's not there, So that's a big thing. Now, if you really just can't fix it and you want to get in it sooner, that's where you really can't have a cosigner. So I'll tell you what you can't do. So you can't, if one person's credit is below the qualification minimum, it doesn't matter if you have like a rich uncle or whatever that would say, hey, I'll cosign with you, because that person with the lower credit can't go on the loan. So that's where you get into probably, trying to like get do something on like the wholesale side or investor side where you're flipping properties, things like that, because there's really no credit required for those type things typically. So you're gonna, you're not really closing on it, you're turning around and flipping it sometimes, or turning around if you got an investor, to help you. So you have to figure that out. You just have to figure out a way to not get the loan. You're just not going to be able to get a loan until your credit's right. But there's other ways to get involved, you know, and one of them would be, you know, wholesaling.
Got you.
Or investors, like using other people's money. So, but someone usually, when you use other people's money, a lot of times you're raising the down payment, and then you get the loan, but you would have to figure out a way just to get the loan if you're not going to qualify.
Gotcha.
So if you have bad credit, it's one of the things you want to look at is trying to fix that for the long term, but doing it the right way. Some people just get kind of in the mode of, I'm ready to fix this. It's kind of, you know, been swept under the rug for so long, and now I'm going to try to fix it. And so they think they're doing the right thing by paying the collection off, but you don't want to do that without negotiating a deletion. So there's little things like that. But
so would they be negotiating with the credit bureau?
You don't negotiate. You negotiate with the creditor. So in this case, it would be the collector. So if the collector is, you know, that's where it's going to be on the credit report. So let's say it was a credit card with Capital One, and it just didn't get paid, and so then it finally went to collection. Then now XYZ attorneys or XYZ collection company is now involved, and so then they put an entry on your credit report, and so. And then now they say they're wanting, you know, the however much that you owe. So then their phone, they'll start sending letters, and their phone number and everything will be on the credit report, and that's who you would start dealing with at that point. Capital One's saying, hey, we've written it off, or we've turned it to collections.
So with this whole deletion thing, I never even knew that was a thing. I think a lot of middle America is not are not like financially literate. And why do you think that is? Because this is not something that's really taught in the schools. You know, like you said, it's best to do your research, do your homework. I think it's like information that you got to go out and seek. But I think if a lot of this was taught in education, like a lot of middle America would be better off that way. In regards to that or taxes, I think a lot of us are just not as financially literate.
I feel you. I mean, I was the same way. You know, when I bought my first home, you know, it was all new. It was very, very, very new and raw and real to me. And so it can be scary because you kind of don't want to make a bad decision, you know. But really, if you have a 2-year history of either school and work, so you don't have to have 2 years on the same job. It could be different jobs as long as, you know, you have a history kind of work the last 2 years. And then a decent credit score, you can still get into a house. Now the thing is that it's harder to find one closer to town. You have to go further out to get the lower prices a lot of times, unless you just find something that's just, you know, really like a HUD foreclosure. Like a HUD foreclosure is like where it was an FHA loan that someone defaulted on. And so HUD actually does these $100 down programs. It's just hard to find, you know, people snatch them up, investors try to snatch them up, but I wouldn't let any of that get you down. I mean, I think having someone like a mentor that's in real estate is key. I think is having someone that you gel with, but you know has a good reputation in the industry and knowledgeable, and that will take the time, you know, but to talk to you. You know, sometimes you have to kind of just bring value to them, you know, figure out, you know, what you can do to bring value to them so that they, will share with you. I mean, sometimes you work for free, do things for them, you know, to learn the big picture. You know what I'm saying? To learn for the long term.
What do you, yeah,
Oh no, go ahead.
what do you think should be the number one investment moving forward? Like if you were to suggest something to someone.
I definitely think it's real estate, residential real estate and/or commercial real estate. Um, Stocks are are great as well. I think the worst one is just a bank account. And so we've just been so conditioned to think that, the bank is where the safe place to put your money and low risk, but the risk, the bigger risk is what you're leaving on the table because they're taking the money that depositors put in and they're loaning that out
Mm-hmm.
multiple times, and so they're making huge returns because they lend it out multiple times. Where in real estate, you park your money into a property and you use leverage. So in other words, $30,000 in or say $8,000, you put $8,000 into the market. In terms of like a stock or something, you've got to come up with 8,000, and then say you get a 10% return, that's $800. But say you use that $8,000 for a down payment on something. Say the 8,000 divided by 3% is about 266. So say you bought a house 3% down of like 260, it'd be $8,000. Now you've got an asset that's 260. Now if that does a 10% rate of return, you've got a $26,000 return. Yes, you have the payment, but you're building equity. So part of your payment is going towards the principal pay down, and you get to deduct the interest. It's one of the biggest. So real estate has advantages over stocks, in my opinion, that just far outweigh. So it's the leverage that you get, meaning I can take a little money to leverage to buy a bigger asset, right? Does that make sense? Versus I've got $8,000. Buying $8,000 worth of anything is really just getting you $8,000. But you leverage it by borrowing, right? So I leverage it into the property. Now I've got a property and I get the returns on the property. And so real estate provides tax advantages as well. You get to deduct the interest typically. So the government's good about allowing that. You check with your CPA, and they'll show you take your final interest statement of the year to your CPA, and then you get to deduct the interest. Whereas like rent, you don't get to deduct any of that. So rent, we always say rent has 100% interest rate. The rate on rent is 100%. So
What do you think is the biggest mistake that people normally make in real estate?
Before they buy a house or after?
I'd say before.
Well, I think for younger folks, it's the biggest mistake that I think is not being educated about how things work, how credit works, what you need, not taking their credit seriously, because once it gets messed up, then it takes time to recover. So I just think, and the other thing is waiting. I mean, just waiting because they're afraid. I would figure out what can I afford that doesn't stretch me. I think it's hard to get ahead when you don't own property. I mean, it's one of the fastest ways, and so I think waiting, to find the right perfect property, because it's not going to be. Let's say they do have a good credit, right? Let's say they got good credit, they got a good job, and now they're kind of ready, but now the fear that's holding them back is finding the right one, and it's something about when you buy a house, it's, it's a big investment. It's the biggest investment you've made at this point of your life, and so sometimes there's this mentality of like it needs to be the perfect place, and you quickly realize that there's no perfect place, because the perfect place is some place in your mind that you would build, and that just doesn't exist. So there's always going to be something that you would change or whatever about the property. And I think that sometimes people get hung up there. And the better thing to do is to realize that this is not my forever home. The average is going to be 5 to 7 years I'm going to stay there. So the idea is to get into the game, first. Now, at some point, I think people are concerned about, because prices have gone up so much, and then they know something about '08 or have heard about it, and so they're concerned about a market crash. And so, am I going to buy a home that's gone down in value? So, that's where you have to start doing the research. Just Googling, like, is real estate going to crash? And you're going to see it's a different story today than it was 10 years ago or 13 years ago. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because, 15, I guess it is now. So is that what it is? 12, 14 years ago. So, because it's just different circumstances. Now we have a shortage of property. So until that levels up, property values are projected to continue to rise. Now, probably not at the same pace, but when, like, I just did a video, what you can get in Tennessee for $400,000. Okay. Yeah, and so a lot of people, because sometimes we'll do a video, they'll say, "Gosh, where can you get something for $400,000 anymore?" Because that's where they're from. So, like, if you're not looking outside of their immediate area, like if you only look in Queens, you're going to see you're going to be used to seeing these price points that are just in Queens. But if you look further out, you're going to see that prices go down. There are places. So I don't know New York State that well. I'm not licensed there. However, there are places to get homes that are still affordable and still use. I mean, it's just further out. But I do think it's a dilemma, because people growing up in an area that's high price, and then they're ready to buy and they can't afford because they're sort of priced out of the market. So then it's time to start looking outside. The other good thing to do, I'll throw this back out, there's another great strategy is buying in like a 2-unit or 3-unit property, or buying your property, but you still got if you have roommates, you can't use the roommate's income, projected rental income, for qualifying, but you can use it to help pay the mortgage for just your own benefits. So what I mean by that, let's say you find a 2 or 3-unit property and you can afford it just barely, like you barely qualify. And so, like, if it didn't have those other units or didn't have the other bedrooms, or if if it was just going to be you probably wouldn't do it, because it's just too much of a stretch, because you're just thinking, all right, I qualify for this, but qualifying and really being able to do this are two different things. So just because the lender says, because the lender gives a max that they're going to lend you, and a lot of times it's more aggressive than what you would even do. So you want to make sure that you're thinking through that to make sure that that you can afford this. But like when you're dealing with, buying a home and then you've got somebody else that's going to rent out the other rooms, they can pay the note for you, and that's a fast track to get ahead. But you've got to be able to afford. So it's just you that's going to qualify, right? You've got to be able to qualify for the house itself, because your buddy's income or the rent doesn't count in the qualifying purposes. But that's a great way. That's probably one of the fastest. Now, multi-unit homes are maybe a little harder to find, but there's just, think about it. Like you buy a place, the payment on it's a duplex, and your payment's $1,500, and you rent out the other side for $1,500. Or you rent out a bedroom. You buy a house, a single family. It's got 3 bedrooms. You qualify for it on your own, and then you rent out 2 rooms to buddies, and they help pay the payment. They have no ownership in it, anything. It's just, that's a great way. That's what a lot of people do to get ahead faster. Just a fast track.
So what about property management when it comes to those properties? So if you do have tenants, rather than communicating with you, they can communicate through a property manager, because there'll be less work on you. But I know there's a fee and a cut that they would get.
Yeah, so property management, so like if you buy an investment property, you can manage yourself, or you can have a property manager. But if you're having, if the property is attached to your residence, that's up to you whether you want to manage it or not, or have a property manager. But usually property managers come into play when you have rental properties that are just on your that are in your portfolio that you don't really go into, you don't see them, whatever. They just take care of all of it. But then yes, there's a fee. But when they move out, that they check, make sure the deposit is ready to return or whatever. So I have property that we manage ourselves, and I have property that is managed by property managers. The property around here we manage, but like out of state, have a property manager.
So what advice would you give for military veterans like myself? And also I have a lot of friends that are in the military or veterans, that when it comes to getting a home, we don't have to put anything down. And the APR for us is typically low, because there's, being a veteran, there's benefits to buying a home, a lot of benefits.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, Prince. I didn't realize that are you also, Glass, are you vet as well? So for veterans, that is probably, you guys have probably the biggest advantage, because like you said, it's 0 down, and then they don't charge that monthly mortgage insurance, that foreclosure protection. Now they do charge what's called a funding fee.
Yeah.
But they allow you to finance that on top of your loan.
Yeah.
If you are disabled, that's waived. So you just have to check your certificate of eligibility to see if you have that fee or not. But the point of it is they can still protect themselves against default if they have to take the property back with that fee. But it's not having to come out of your pocket. You get to finance it into the loan, which may only make your payment a couple bucks more or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But you're not having to come out of pocket this big chunk, like a few $1,000s. So veterans, the other good thing is you've got, the debt to income ratio can be higher, so that they're more lenient, and credit scores can be lower. So I've seen credit scores in the 500s. Now, what they're going to look at is your last 12 months. So, 12 months with no 30-day late. So late payments really anything 30 days or later. So if you got a credit card and it's due on the 2nd or the 5th, and you don't pay it till the 25th, so maybe you got to pay the 15-day late fee, but it's not going to report late until it's on the credit bureau, so it's 30 days late. So you just want to make sure, VA, that you got a clean 12-month history, and that you've got good job history. And you don't have to, like I said, it doesn't have to be the same job. It just needs to be no giant gaps. Like I worked here for 6 months, I was off for 3 or 4 months. Now I've been back here for 2 months. that can be, problematic sometimes.
For someone who wants to be retired by 40, what are some of the best things that they can do to ensure that?
Well, I think so it's setting up yourself for cash flow. So I think the thing that a lot of us bought into, including myself, was that you work, save, you put money into your company retirement plan, whatever that is, and that will, and then you'll save enough, and then you'll draw off of that someday. Problem with that, very difficult to save enough money to just be able to draw off of that in order to survive. What you need to be able to do is purchase cash producing assets, so income producing assets, which would be real estate. So there's certain types of debt that are good, and that, I would say, that's real estate debt. So I think sometimes people get caught up in listen to talk show hosts. I think Dave Ramsey, he's local here, and he does a lot of good with budgeting, things like that. But one of the things that he talks about is saving 20% down and doing a 15-year note. And that advice has kept many homeowners, many people that are deserving to be homeowners, from becoming a homeowner, because it takes too long to save 20% down. It takes a long time, and it would be better to get into the market sooner. And then the 15-year note is going to be a much higher payment. So there's an example of, like, a financial guru that I think has, given advice that I don't think works very well. I don't think people can do that, but let's say if you've got a property that's worth, 300,000, let's just say 300,000, and you decide you can buy it now with the money you have enough to put 3% down, or, you wait 3 years, but what the property is $60,000 more. You just lost all of that. It's better to get on the train when you can, right? So instead of waiting till you save enough for a bigger down, because remember this, for every $10,000 you put down, on average, it reduces the payment about $50 a month.
Wow.
Yeah. 20,000, about $100 a month. So once you get to whatever the minimum down payment is, my strong advice would be that's when you get into the house. You can afford it. You never want to stretch yourself where, like, this is stretching me, I can't do this. No, not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, if you can do it, and then so a lot of times people have a side hustle, right? And so they have other income. They just couldn't maybe count it. The underwriter wouldn't count it because you didn't have a 2-year history of the side hustle. But your main job qualifies you just barely. But in reality, you've got this other side hustle that's bringing in income. So you feel you're sleeping fine, right? You're not losing sleep because of that. So, but you getting into the game, now you've got the house. And one of the easiest things to do is, buy a house, 3% down, stay in it a year, because you're required to stay in it a year, convert that to a rental, and then buy the next house now for you, Prince, buy the first one VA, 0 down, stay in it a year. If you want to convert that to a rental, you may have to do conventional the next time. You can have 2 VA loans, but there's only certain circumstances and that sort of thing. So what you'd want to do is, get your funds together and save during that time, and then change that and convert your first primary to a rental now, and then have renters in there that pays the note for you, cash flow it, right? Even if it's only cash flowing a little bit, $100 or $200, you're getting more benefit than just the $100 or $200. You're getting a huge tax benefit. Plus, historically, real estate has risen over time. Doesn't mean it's not going to go down at some point, but long term, just like the stock market, real estate has been a good investment. long term. So then you could buy that second property. Now you own two properties.
Mm-hmm.
You buy the second property with a small down payment. So you could do, now you'd have to do 5% down because you'd already bought a home. So if you've already bought a home, you can't do 3% down conventional anymore. You'd have to do 5% down conventional, or you could do an FHA loan, which is 3.5%. But you always want to do conventional over FHA if you can. Conventional is better because they reward you for higher credit scores, and that PMI, private mortgage insurance, you can drop it at some point. FHA, it's permanent. Can't ever drop it without refinancing.
If you could give one piece of advice to your 20-year-old self, what would it be?
That's a good one. For sure, getting a mentor.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, it's game changer. So there's so much human nature. I mean, that works against us, and what having a mentor does, it provides that knowledge, but it's also accountability, and so accountability is huge, right? Because you get more done. I mean, you're required to report to someone. You're required to turn in something. You're required to do assignments. And so that accountability keeps you going, like having a workout partner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like if you work out on your own, all of us got that friend that self-motivated kind of thing. They just run and work out on their own. But if you've got a partner, it sure makes it easier because they're kind of dependent on you. They're going to be there. Even when you don't feel like going, you go. So mentorship is kind of similar. I mean, you get so much out of the accountability part, but then just having someone that can guide you along the way. And I think it's just asking questions, not being afraid. And the other big thing is, besides that, is I would have told my 20-year-old self is, don't worry about what other people think. I think sometimes we get stuck with that, and we worry about, especially now in this day and age of social media, that they don't want to go on camera. Do I look fat? Do I look this? Do I look that? All of these things. I don't look good. At the end of the day, it's who we. We're just who we are. Everybody's got something to give. Is how I believe. I mean, I think everyone has value. We just have to find out how that is, but if we're good at something, you should tell the world, you owe it to them.
I agree, for sure. What do you think are some of the best loans to take out?
Well, just going back to, I think the conventional first-time buyer loan is good. They have another one that inside the conventional 3% down, they also have a version that is income restrictive that rewards you with lower mortgage, lower PMI, and a little bit better rate, and you just have to be below the income limit for that area median income. You have to be at 80%. So there's ways to look that up. The area median income for the area, it's called the AMI. And you have to be at 80% of that. So it'll tell you right there so there's a couple of programs like Home Possible and Home Ready. Those are just Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's different versions of kind of the same product, 3% down. So those are the best. But like for Prince, VA, if you're a veteran, definitely first home, that's a no-brainer. That's a great program. Not going to beat that. And then, like I said, some of those first-time buyer programs that if you're just not able to get the down payment together, you can go to that HUD.gov /states, and then just click on Learn About Home Ownership, the tab Learn About Home Ownership, and then that will show you what programs are available in your particular area for grants. So where you could have zero down, so they would grant you the down payment. Those
So
are good ones.
there's a 25-year-old out there that has no sense of direction, but all he knows is that he wants to be rich. What do you think is the first step that he should take?
Well, I mean, I would say, I mean, he needs to buy real estate. I mean, but he needs to educate himself. And I'm not saying necessarily college or whatever, but some sort of way he needs to figure out what it is he likes to do. If he's wanting to be wealthy, I just think the quickest path and the least risky path with the biggest payoffs is real estate. So there's definitely other ways that people make money, right? I mean, they open up a business. You know, nowadays, everyone, you know, is crypto everywhere you see. It's NFTs everywhere you see. There's high risk with those. So you can invest some money there, but you know, it has to be money that you would be willing to lose. Whereas real estate, I think, you know, if you can start building a portfolio of homes, it's not as hard as you think. You know, I think the unknown that holds people back sometimes. And that's where I think the mentor comes in, or coach, you know, having someone, you know, a real estate agent, that someone is just further down the tracks than you are.
Got you. Well, that's all the questions I have for you. Thank you so much, Mr. Neely. This has been very
Yeah.
informative. I
Tell me,
definitely
Mark.
Oh, okay, sorry. Mark, this has been very informative. I thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me know when it's ready, and I'll promote it out as well. I'll send it out. Give me the link, and we'll get some listeners going. Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.